Across Britain, as indeed across many parts of the world, people are trying to work out how to keep their heads above financial water in the coming months.
Getting to the stage now where, do I pay for food or do I pay for heat?
We sort of watch our smart meter thinking, is it going to be a really painful month this month?
I'm going to be afraid to switch the lights on because the power bill is going to be ridiculous.
But how much of an impact will higher energy bills have? To find out, we need to drill down into what we spend our money on. And this bar here shows the weekly spending of an average household. I know there's no such thing, but on balance, £588 a week. That's the average spending. And let's just break it down. You can see about £53 goes on restaurants and hotels a week on average. You've got spending on recreation and culture, that's £75 a week, £82 on transport, £64 on food and drink. You can see how it adds up. And then you've got other things that you can't avoid, things like mortgage and council tax, £50 on that, and by far and away the biggest, £146 on income tax. But then on top of all of that, there it is, electricity and gas, £25. Now, it may not sound like much, but bear in mind that's based on bills back in 2020. And if the energy price cap goes up to £2,000 this spring, as the formula suggests, well, look at the red slice. It goes up to £38 a week. And if the price cap rises again later on this year to £2,400, as again looks plausible based on the wholesale prices, it's up to £46 a week. Now, to put that into context, let's look at spending on heat and power. So it's basically that red slice as a proportion of the total going back to 1970. And you can see it was high in the 70s and the 80s, and then it came down in the 90s, the late 90s and the 2000s. But if you have that £2,000 price cap, look at what happens to that red line, up to 5.6% of spending. That's the highest since the late 80s, and a £2,400 price cap would take them up to 6.8% of spending. That would be the highest on record, even higher than we saw in the energy crisis, that famous energy crisis of the 1970s. And bear in mind, the impact is greater for different households. So what we're going to do is go back to those bars showing spending. You can see there's the average there, but we're also going to look at the top 10% and the lowest 10% in terms of their spending. And you can see there are energy bills there after those two expected price cap increases. And for the average, it is around 7%. So there's 7% of spending. But just look, for the top 10%, you're talking about 4% of spending, so much smaller in proportionate terms. And for the lowest tenth, you're talking about 13% of spending. That is a massive squeeze. Now, it's worth saying the energy bill could be even worse than the 1970s, but there is a question as to whether we can expect a repeat of the energy crisis in other respects. So are we going to see three-day weeks, mass shutdowns? Are we going to see power cuts? The business secretary says no.
There is absolutely no question, Mr. Speaker, of the lights going out or people being unable to heat their homes. There'll be no three-day working weeks or a throwback to the 1970s.
So there we are, that's pretty clear. But part of the reason he is probably actually right comes down to this. These bars show you what share of people worked in different sectors in years gone by, so going all the way back to 1841. Look in particular at the black bar, that's manufacturing. And you can see that while in the 1960s and into the 70s, you've got about 40% of people, so an enormous section of the workforce who did work in manufacturing and energy, so directly affected by any shutdowns. Roll on, because these are high energy sectors, roll on to the 2000s and you're talking about 10% of people working in manufacturing and energy. Simply put, there is less industrial base to shut down. If there are shutdowns, they'll probably mostly be in China. And as far as we can tell, that is already happening. And that implies more supply chain problems for a lot longer. And it's not just product manufacturing. Energy is the backbone of pretty much every product, especially things like fertilizers.
We paid $6 per unit of gas last year at this time, and today we're at close to 40. So we have, it's a significant volatility. So more than we've ever seen.
So they and others have been cutting back production and prices. Higher fertilizer prices means higher prices for farmers, which means, well, back to this chart. While the initial impact of energy prices might be over there in the coming months, by the end of the year, we'll also see the impact in terms of higher food prices as well. You see where this is heading. An energy crisis is really an everything crisis. The longer prices are high, the more they push up the price of everything. It looks increasingly like a perfect storm. So on top of higher energy bills over there, That's energy, that's going up. You've also got national insurance, the health and social care levy, remember, that's coming in this April. And you've got more people as well being pulled into higher income tax bands. And you've got the impact of higher interest rates from the Bank of England. They're going up as well. So all told, you're talking about, look at the red bit, over a third of the typical spending going up this spring. And that's before you've got the inflationary impact elsewhere. For many families, this may amount to an almost unprecedented price shock.
There are about 2 million households in England that are in fuel stress, who pay more than 10% of their household incomes on energy bills, which is a general sign of energy being unaffordable. And what we found was that when prices jump up by more than 50% overnight, this number will triple to more than 6 million.
When you put it all together, we are talking about the kind of hit to real incomes you don't tend to see outside of a serious recession, which is why this is likely to be one of the defining issues of the year.